Today on Toby Jones Talks Music, we turn our attention to the Silver Fox, Charlie Rich, and the second episode, inadvertently, of the series Appreciating the Music That I Already Have. That's right, you can sit and plan videos for a week, but sometimes they just happen, and I just happened to turn this album on this afternoon, Charlie Rich's Boss Man, for the first time. And I thought, what a great opportunity to do a first impressions video. I decided for the first time, probably ever, listening to an album, it was in the background. I wasn't listening to it solely because I might have got a bit bored of it and turned it off. But while it was in the background, I was doing little scribbles on this piece of paper and have managed to fill a little, I guess that's an A5 piece of paper, with scribbles of what I thought about these songs. And it didn't take too long at all because this compilation album was about 35 minutes long, so I listened to some of the tracks twice, even 3 times. So it probably took an hour or just over, and I have to say I've had a great time. And I thought this greatly fits the mantra of appreciating the music you have, that acting as a gateway onto other stuff, absolutely brilliant. And I'm very much one of those who procrastinates and thinks, no, I don't want to play that because it might take too long, I'm only sitting here for 10-20 minutes, and this album's 40 minutes, and I don't like leaving an album half listened to, and all that probably only goes through my head and nobody else's. But I did it. I listened to Boss Man, and I have had a wonderful hour or so listening to it. So let's talk a little bit about Charlie Rich, shall we? The Silver Fox country musician. He had a selection of labels in the late 50s and 60s. It was a very unorthodox career, really, that Charlie Rich had, because before this album, 1973's Behind Closed Doors, which won the Album of the Year, he had very little success. He moved round like no one's business. He was with Sun Records, who played as a session musician on a lot of the artists. Then I think Jerry Lee Lewis, Elvis Presley possibly, but there was obviously those were the guys who were with Sun Records. But we played as a session musician. He was with Philips, Groove, Smash Records, High Records, and Epic Records signed him in 1967. And amazingly, he didn't really have much luck or much success until 5 years later in 1972. The pre-release for Behind Closed Doors came out with the single I Take It On Home. That went to number 6 in the country charts, and boom, everything went up from then. Behind Closed Doors was a massive success compared to anything that Charlie Rich had done in the past. And as a matter of fact, I was looking at this album as a bit of research to another video that I was planning on doing. I'm not going to reveal too much about that, just in case I don't end up doing it. And there were a few albums in the list that are for aforementioned video that's a little bit of a secret, and I thought I'll play a couple of them. Turns out I've only played the one, but I've really nicely played the one, because there's been quite a few albums in the past. In fact, there's been a lot of albums, those that I talked about in the first video of this series with the Glenn Campbell ones that I've only played once, and I look on the back of the cover and I think, I don't know anything that's on this. Unfortunately, that's something that won't happen again with Boss Man, because I've listened to it for a couple of times, I've made some scribbles, and I can even go, well, I can revisit that. That track is something that's not really my thing. There's some things that I've gone, well, it's not really my thing, or some things I might grow into it, so I'll go and listen to it a bit more. So it almost gives me a little bit of a tick list to something to go and listen to again. So if that's something you want to go and use, that is well worth it when you are listening to an album. Even if it's just a scribble to go good, bad, indifferent, what you like, what you don't like about it. Because, and this is completely off topic, I've seen a couple of things online, sort of from a mental health perspective, that thinking about something, almost if you picture this glass, which is well placed, thinking is just for all that water to go outside the glass. It's not going anywhere, right? It's just like a waterfall. If you write something down, you've got an end product, which is like this 3/4 pint of squash, or this A5 sheet of paper that I've written on. A little hint at the video that may or may not be to come is that this is actually a reissue of an album, The Best of Charlie Rich. It was released in the States as The Best of Charlie Rich. It was released over here as Boss Man. And the first thing that caught my eye that I thought, oh, I think we've been cheated here, or what's going on here, is, and a good thing about the album before I start, is that the track listing on the front of the vinyl actually reflects the track listing in order. That is a real bugbear of mine. When you're looking at a track listing on the front of an album, or even the back of an album, actually, the back of an album is guilty of this sometimes as well, and it's incorrect to what the actual running order is. So you're listening to it and you think, I don't know what I'm listening to here. I don't know what tracks are. But fortunately on the front and the back, the track listing is exactly the same. But when I got this album, and I inherited this album from a great aunt, she's given me about 50 or 60 different records that were just gathering dust, and Charlie Rich is an artist I like, so I very much took that gladly from Charlie Rich. And he's an artist that I don't really know his catalogue all that well. I love Behind Closed Doors. I've done a review of that on the channel years and years ago. I might update that possibly as time goes on. But I didn't know whether this was a studio album, a compilation. But when I saw I Take It On Home on it, I thought, well, maybe this is a later compilation. Doing a bit of research into this was before the Behind Closed Doors album, and not knowing anything about it really, quite apart from that, because there's not the level of detail on the internet, I would surmise that this album was probably released on the back of the success of that single. And I think that the compilations of this time are a fascinating document, an interesting one at least, because it shows what the label wants to put out at that point. It's not a retrospective where they go, what were the biggest hits? I've got a good CD example of this. I've got a good Charlie Rich Greatest Hits CD, which of course comes way after Behind Closed Doors. So a lot of the post-72 stuff is on this. So I'm looking at this, I'm not massively knowledgeable about Charlie Rich's career, but I'd say at least half of this, if not more, is 73 onwards. So what inevitably happens is that the stuff before 73 kind of gets washed out or replaced or forgotten. Of course, if you want to buy a longer compilation, then you might get some of that stuff feature. But in 1972, this was the only stuff that was there. So what's the label going to use? Is it singles that have come out before I Take It On Home, because presumably if this was released to promote Charlie Rich's other work apart from I Take It On Home, then you'd maybe use the best of all of his stuff, because remember, all of his I think he'd done albums for kind of 10 years now, every would release 6 or 7 albums. None of it's been really that successful, apart from a couple of singles. I think Lonely Weekends got into the top 30 with like a Presley-like vocal. But apart from that, nothing else did massively well, at least not to the extent of what was to come. So what features on it? Is it really the best of? Is it the 10 best tracks? Is it just promoting singles from the last few years? Almost, I Take It On Home's done really well. The singles from the last couple of years didn't do well, so we'll put all these on an album and hope that people go and buy the singles. Is it a coherent collection? So is it you can see that transition and what's been going on the last couple of years? Somewhat this is. Does it show what's to come on Behind Closed Doors? I thought it did in some areas. And I just think it's fascinating because it shows those songs that possibly don't stand the test of time, or, as I've said, hits that come later that replace those that are there at the time. And the whole irony of this, and the message of appreciating the music that you've already got, is that I've had this CD compilation for a number of years now, and track 7 on here is Life Has Its Little Ups and Downs, and I couldn't tell you how that song goes. That song features on here, Boss Man. I'd listened to it before on Charlie Rich's Greatest Hits, the CD. I didn't know that until I've got the CD out just before filming this. But doesn't that just show that it's almost a little bit of ill care of your collection, listening to something passively and not really taking it in? I'm not beating myself up about it, but I do wonder that there are so many albums, there are so many songs that I could have added to the collection and gone and revisited, but instead listened to it once, yeah, that was okay, but there's nothing great here, move on to something else. So I think that what I've done today is pretty positive. So let's talk about what is actually on this compilation album, what features. Well, I've done a little bit of research around Wikipedia and Discogs and tried to get as much info as I can before recording this. So there are 12 tracks here. One of them is Sitting and Thinking, that's the earliest, so that's a single from 1962. The last song, of course, is I Take It On Home. So you've got a 10-year span in these songs, and actually they sound decently coherent, apart from probably one which I'll touch on. Big Boss Man is on here as well. That's from his 1963 album Charlie Rich, although I think the version that's here is from a 1970 album also called Boss Man. This is how confusing this all gets, because this is actually the best of Charlie Rich, but released under the Boss Man moniker, although the 1970 album Boss Man has a different track list. Whew. But the original was much faster. I've just listened to that, and quite frankly, it's worse. Nice and Easy is from 1964. I don't think there's any album attached to that. That was just a single. Set Me Free is from 1968 from the album of the same title. Life Has Its Little Ups and Downs. That's from the 1969 album The Fabulous Charlie Rich. July 12, 1939 is also from that album. A Woman Left Lonely and A Part of Your Life was from a 1971 compilation, The Best of Charlie Rich. Now, whether that's this one or another The Best of Charlie Rich that came before, it's not completely clear. But you know what? I'm not here to tell all the facts. I'm not a Charlie Rich completionist. I'm just trying to kind of do the best I can. So if there are some inaccuracies, please feel free to report them down in the comments. We've talked about I Take It On Home, the 1972 single. Daddy Don't You Walk So Fast, I think appears for the first time here. I can't see any record of it beforehand. And I Do My Swinging at Home was from that album Boss Man as well. So the track listing is Nice and Easy, Life Has Its little Ups and Downs, A Woman Left Lonely, Daddy Don't You Walk So Fast, A Part of Your Life, that's side 1, and then on side 2, Big Boss Man, Sitting and Thinking, I Take It On Home, July 12, 1939, I Do My Swinging at Home, and Set Me Free. So the most songs that a side has got is 6, and that's on side 2. And these songs are all fairly short. I would guess maybe 3 minutes each as a maximum. So the sides are quite quick, and that's a good thing with this, that it's not an album that goes on too long. And to be fair, I would say probably on side 1, towards the end of the side, it does start to lack a little bit for me. So it needed something to pull me back in. Unfortunately, that's what happened. So I'm going to read you through my little notes that I made of these songs. So the first one is Nice and Easy, which I said was bluesy, relaxed. And I'm trying to read my handwriting here, and I cannot. I mean, this was only an hour ago. Funky piano. That looks nothing like funky piano. And another thing from this video is that my handwriting is absolutely shocking. I can't read what this word says. You're going to have to give me a couple of minutes. What the hell's that? F from doesn't go anywhere. I can't even read that word now. So it's bluesy, relaxed, quite a funky piano, doesn't go anywhere particularly. Okay, 5 or a 6. Then we come to the second track, Life Has Its Little Ups and Downs. Yeah, that one that I mentioned earlier. And I was really pleased with this track because this is something that I haven't heard from Charlie Rich before. Now, it's a fairly small sample size because there's this album, which there's not a bad track on this. This is a brilliant album, but I think you've got that familiarity with an album like this that I've heard so much. So possibly someone as a newcomer wouldn't say the same. And then there's a few tracks on this which I like. I Love My Friend, Every Time You Touch Me I Get High, and A Very Special Love Song. Those are the ones I like on here. So this was completely different to anything I've heard from Charlie Rich before. It was soulful, it was jazzy, it was like a ballad. Funnily enough, on the back of this album, do you remember an era? Well, I don't remember the era myself, obviously, but the era of when you'd have a nice write-up on the back of an album. So Mort Good writes on the back of this album, in Rolling Stone it was said, Charlie is perhaps a soul singer with country roots. Which is interesting. I'd never really thought of it like that before, but I guess that is somewhat true, because what I expect from Charlie Rich, and I'll talk about this when I talk about this Big Boss Man, what I expect from Charlie Rich is different to what I expect from, say, Johnny Cash or Kenny Rogers, or some of maybe Roy Orbison, particularly his early material. I'm thinking the likes of Candyman or Working for the Man, which isn't my favourite, but there's some charm in it. I don't like to hear that sort of thing from Charlie Rich, but what I do like to hear is this sort of thing. So it's soulful, it's jazzy. The closest I think that I could say to this is If You Wouldn't Be My Lady from Behind Closed Doors. It's got a good story. It's a good story song. I was talking about that on a video recently that I really like. Story songs, slow build-up, catchy, bluesy chorus. That was a good track. 7+. I think that one's going to go into the essential Charlie Rich playlist that I've got anyway. Unfortunately, the third track, A Woman Left Lonely, isn't so good. Much slower, plodding. The solo comes from nowhere. There's a very short solo, but that's quite nice actually when you're writing in real time and things come that you don't quite expect. So I was trying not to write too much early on, but I thought no, I'll keep writing, and then a solo comes in. That's nice to hear. Better than expected, and that's what I'm alluding to there. I thought it would plod along throughout. That's okay. That's a 5 or a 6. The fourth track, Daddy Don't You Walk So Fast. It's very sort of like a Peace on You vibe from Behind Closed Doors, but I really like that track. Not so keen on this. And isn't it funny, from another artist, I'd be okay with it. I've put here very country-like / it made me think of like a Tammy Wynette sort of sound. If it was Tammy Wynette singing it, I'd probably dig it. But because I'm expecting something else from Charlie Rich, then maybe I'm not liking it so much. Isn't it funny? I guess we can do that in... I talk about this channel's quite rock-centric. We can do that with rock bands as well, can't we? Well, I don't like it because my band's singing this. If it was a band, a completely new band, I'd probably like it. But because it's by this band and I know that they do better stuff, I don't like it. Strange how that works out. That was okay. I probably gave that a 4 or a 5. The end of side 1, as I said again, is not great. So A Part of Your Life, it's plods along. I'm not keen on the lyric on this one. That's the thing with particularly country music. It's got to have a decent story for me. And the whole, I think it's I Want to Be a Part of Your Life. It's like, there's not that much here. But it does speed up towards the end. Very, 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 very short section that shows promise, but not enough promise really for me. So that's a 4 or a 5. So side 1, Nice and Easy's okay. Life Has Its Little Ups and Downs is really good. The rest of it, okay, but starts to get weaker towards the end of the side. And then side 2 starts with Big Boss Man. And with that track title, I thought, I know what's coming here. I know exactly what's coming. Go out and listen to Blue Suede Shoes by Charlie Rich. Obviously the cover of the Carl Perkins, Elvis Presley song. If I want to clear a room, I'll go and put that on. He sings the first line and then I think forgets the rest of it. I think it must just be a studio outtake. I'm talking about Blue Suede Shoes, by the way. It's about 70 seconds long and it's not the Charlie Rich that I want to listen to, but it was what he was encouraged to do in his early career. And Big Boss Man follows that sort of mantra, really, that sort of groove. And actually, I'm quite appreciative of this version after listening to the earlier version because that earlier version is worse. This is somewhat better, but what did I write about this? Oh Christ, no. This is just like Blue Suede Shoes. I'm not listening to Charlie Rich for this. Fine, but not for me. I gave it a 4. You know what? When I listen to it twice, I can kind of get into it. If somebody says that's Jerry Lee Lewis singing that, I dig it. I'm fine with it. But not Charlie Rich. B2, which is Sitting and Thinking. So this is very early on. So what I haven't talked about too much, actually, is that side 1 is pretty, apart from Nice and Easy, and that is does make some sense, because Nice and Easy sounds completely different from the rest of what's there. It's quite bluesy and relaxed, as I said. The rest of the stuff is from a fairly similar time period. So we got 69, Woman Left Lonely, Part of Your Life, 71. So yeah, Daddy Don't You Walk Too Fast appears for the first time here. So apart from the first track, everything's within a couple of years. Big Boss Man is an earlier track, albeit re-recorded. Sitting and Thinking is that 1962 single. And this is very country-like as well. I'm half expecting Willie Nelson to pipe up with the start. It's got a bit of a Hello Walls sound with the start of it. Both sound and lyrics, it's very country-like. And I know Charlie Rich is probably classified as a country singer, but I'm thinking again, more in the kind of Tammy Wynette or George Jones. Very much sort of cowboy era, that sort of thing, in the 60s. Not what I like from Charlie Rich in the 70s. Yeah, it's okay, a 5 or a 6. I was pretty aggravated, and that was one of the reasons why I was going to listen to this album, what I heard, I Take It On Home. And I thought, have I been conned with Behind Closed Doors? Because, and this is what I want to talk about in another video, that there are some albums, particularly in the world of country, that feel like just songs spliced together and not from a session. Right, not from, not going into the studio, recording the album with the musicians and then putting it out. I worried that from this, the fact that I Take It On Home is from this, and maybe it's earlier on. Was this song recorded before Behind Closed Doors? Is the Behind Closed Doors track from another session? It was really troubling me, something that stresses probably me and nothing else. Fortunately, it is the same track, and knowing now that it's a precursor to Behind Closed Doors, I'm okay with it. It's a great track. It is. It's a great track from Behind Closed Doors. I would actually say, if I'm being hypercritical, that from this album, I Take It On Home, it isn't one of the strongest. Till I Can't Take It Anymore, the next track on Behind Closed Doors is probably better. But it's good. That's all that matters. It's good. Track 4, which is July 12, 1939. I thought, what's so significant about that day? I thought it's before World War II, so I don't know what's significant about this. I don't know if it was just me listening to it, but it felt like a bit like Ode to Billy Joe in its beat. And actually the vocals as well. It's very raw, just a guitar and I think a bass to start off with. I bet if you increase the pitch of that vocal a little bit, right, it would sound just like Bobby Gentry on Ode to Billy Joe. So weird that Charlie Rich has done that. And again, this isn't an earlier career thing. After all, this is the same album as Life Has Its Little Ups and Downs from the fabulous Charlie Rich. So that's just really strange, isn't it? Because that track sounds completely different to Life Has Its Little Ups and Downs. And something that I can take or not take from this album is, because frankly, I haven't got the time or desire to go and listen to everything that Charlie Rich has done. But this has maybe encouraged me to go and listen to a bit more Charlie Rich. So from this compilation, being the 10 years apart that it is, I can go, I'm not really a fan of the earlier stuff. However, Life Has Its Little Ups and Downs, that's from the fabulous Charlie Rich. So should I go and listen to that album? Well, based on July 12, 1939, yeah, I'm not sure. I think that was the song I was talking about, wasn't it? That sounds a little bit like Ode to Billy Joe. I say that it gets better, more instruments come in longer into the track. And I'm not quite there, but I would probably get into it in more listen. So the fabulous Charlie Rich from 1970, I think it might be, is possibly the album for me to go and listen to. Track 5, I Do My Swinging at Home. Oh, brilliant. Really great, really great. It's simple but effective. It's just a great swing song, click your fingers, tap your toes. I'm won over within the first 5 seconds. Got a funky rhythm, simple but effective. Clicking and toe tapping, good. 7+ that one. And then Set Me Free, which is the last track, again from 68. So I would actually expect Set Me Free to be closer to this point. So from this very small sample size, it appears that maybe because a lot of this is from the Epic Records era, that there are inklings of what's to come with Behind Closed Doors, but he hasn't quite got the formula right yet. Because Set Me Free, again, not knowing when I listened to this for the first time, when this was released, Set Me Free, and what relationship it's got with Behind Closed Doors, I've just put, feels like it could work on Behind Closed Doors Take 2. There's a bit of spoken word, it's a bit different. It does something a bit different, so that's okay. I'll give it a 5 or a 6. And the positive thing about this one that I always get a little bit hesitant from, of course, when things have been well played and well loved is the word to use, of course, isn't it, from generations past, is that this is in good condition, the vinyl's in good nick, and it plays very well as well. I've talked quite a bit on the channel about vinyl, it doesn't play that well, and the surface noise, very minimal surface noise. This is a very enjoyable listen on vinyl. So appreciating the music that I've got, absolutely. Going to listen to Boss Man this afternoon, picking up a couple of tracks. Life Has Its Little Ups and Downs, and definitely I Do My Swinging at Home is going to be one's tracks that go into my rotation. Fortunately, the first track is on the Charlie Rich Greatest Hits compilation. I'm going to have to see where I can get I Do My Swinging at Home. Again, that's on the Boss Man album, so I might well go and listen to that. So there's this Boss Man album and the other Boss Man album. God, this is just going to get so confusing. But appreciating the music I've got, part 2 with Charlie Rich. I've thoroughly enjoyed that. And that tells me, you know what? Bit of preaching before the end of this video. Anything in life. Anything when I'm sat there at night thinking, no, I ain't going to bother doing that. Or, I want to do that. No, I haven't really got the time. Or, I'm not that bothered. When tomorrow comes, you don't do it. You've moved on to something else. Something that you've got a bit of passion about. Something you want to do it. If you've got a bit of time, go and do it. And that's the bonkers story that comes from this album. Charlie Rich, Boss Man. Long live vinyl, long live music, long live country music. God, I'm so fortunate to live in the era that I do today, with all this information around me as well, because if I'd have had this at the time, I'd have kind of been stuck, not knowing where this was from. And I've said this a lot. You can tell if you're a long-term viewer of the channel, or even someone watching for the first time, me at my... I look older, at the age of 25, into this sort of music. I'm someone that I think I'd have loved to have been round at that time, but with the technology of today. Can't get the best of both worlds. But Charlie Rich, Boss Man. Video I never thought I'd be making, but inadvertently, part 2, of appreciating the music that you already have. This is available on podcast form if you're listening on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Amazon Music as well. I think this should be available on all good podcast platforms, but please, if you do listen on a podcast platform and this isn't available, then do leave it down below and I'll try and get it added on there. We're also on all the social network accounts. I put an alert on all of those to say that a video has been released, just in case you don't catch it on YouTube. But the best way to catch it on YouTube is to subscribe, put notifications on, and then you get a notification to your device when the videos go out. Right, that's all the self-promo done. If you click up there, there'll be another video on the channel that you may well be interested in. It could be the behind closed doors review. It could well be something else. Thank you for watching, and go and appreciate the music that you have.